far away from the quiet corners of the galaxy, beyond the places where light easily travels. A weak signal was moving through the dark. It was not loud or strong. It was old, cracked, and fading with time. It repeated the same message again and again. An SOS, a desperate cry for help from a dying world. The message came from a race known as the Valari, who once had beautiful cities and shining skies. But now their sun was collapsing, their planet breaking apart, and their hope almost gone. For hundreds of years they had sent their message into space, but no one had ever answered. Most believed no one ever would. On Earth, the humans who had spread across space were known by many names. But among alien worlds, they were called Deathworlders. It was not a name of honor, but of fear. Earth, their home, was one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy, full of storms, predators, and diseases. Any species that could survive such a place had to be tough, clever, and strong beyond imagination. To other races, humans were wild creatures of steel and fire, warriors who laughed in the face of danger. The Valari did not know it yet, but their final SOS had reached these very people, the Deathworlders. The signal was picked up by an old listening station orbiting Mars. The message was weak, broken by cosmic interference, but the computer still translated a few clear words. Help. Our world is dying. The operator on duty, a young woman named Kara, froze when she saw it. She replayed it again and again, trying to believe what she heard. Finally, she whispered. This came from outside the known network. This is real. The message was quickly sent to Earth Command. Within hours, scientists, linguists, and military officers gathered in a large hall under the shining domes of New Geneva. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Who had sent this message and what should they do about it? Some believed it could be a trap, a signal meant to lure them into danger. Others thought it might be a test from an advanced civilization, watching to see what humans would do. The arguments went on for hours. Then Admiral Reeve, an old man with silver hair and a calm voice, stood up. He looked around the room and said, "If someone cries for help, we answer.
That's who we are."
We don't ignore suffering, not anymore." His words carried the weight of human history, a history filled with war, mistakes, and loss, but also courage, kindness, and the will to survive. The room went silent. Then slowly, one by one, heads nodded in agreement. The decision was made. Earth would respond. Not with a single ship, but with a full rescue fleet. They called it Operation Mercy. Engineers, soldiers, doctors, and scientists began to prepare. Massive starships were loaded with supplies, medicine, shelter pods, and survival domes. The greatest of these ships was the UNS Resolute, commanded by Captain Mira Solon, a woman known for her bravery and compassion. When she received the order, she looked out the window at the planet below and whispered, "We're going to bring them home." For the next 3 weeks, the fleet crossed light years of cold space. Every ship's crew worked in silence, knowing they might be flying into a dead world, or worse, a trap. Some feared the unknown, but others were filled with quiet hope. Humanity had always been the fighter, the survivor. But this mission was different. It was not about war. It was about saving someone else. For the first time in history, humans were answering a call that no one else would. As the fleet neared the coordinates, strange lights began to appear on their scanners. Radiation fields, debris from broken satellites, fragments of cities drifting in orbit. The Valari planet was dying faster than expected. Its surface looked like a wound. Dark red cracks spreading across continents, oceans turning to steam, clouds glowing with lightning. Captain Solon stood on the bridge of her ship, eyes fixed on the burning world ahead. Her crew waited for her command. "Begin descent," she said softly. The ships entered the atmosphere. Turbulence shook their hulls. Fire danced across the sky as the Deathworlders landed for the first time on Valari soil. What they saw broke their hearts. Mountains had collapsed into ash. Rivers were nothing but black smoke. The once beautiful Valari cities were in ruins, towers half buried in dust, streets filled with silence. And yet, in the middle of this destruction, they found life. Small groups of Valari had survived underground, hiding from the burning air. When the first group of survivors saw the human ships landing, they were terrified. To them, these massive black ships looked like weapons of war. They had heard stories about the Deathworlders, creatures who could live through fire, who needed no mercy. But when the humans stepped out, they were not holding guns. They carried food, medicine, and translation devices. Captain Mira herself was among the first to walk forward. The Valari elder, thin and trembling, stepped out from his shelter. His eyes were large, glowing faintly with fear and exhaustion. He looked at the tall, armored woman standing before him. Her helmet opened with a hiss, revealing tired human eyes full of compassion. She reached out her hand and said softly, "We came because you called." The elder didn't understand the words at first, but he felt the meaning. Slowly, his trembling hand reached out and touched hers. Around them, the burning wind howled, but in that small moment, the noise seemed to fade. Two races, born from different worlds, met not as enemies but as souls who understood pain. The message was sent back to Earth Command. Contact made. Survivors found. Rescue operations beginning. Across the galaxy, the words echoed through the networks. For the first time, the Deathworlders were not feared for their strength. They were respected for their mercy. As the fleet began their rescue work, everyone on board knew that something greater had started that day. Humanity had crossed a line, from being just a warrior race to becoming something new. Protectors, healers, and guardians of life itself. The old legends about Deathworlders being monsters of survival would soon be rewritten, because on that dying planet under a burning sky, humanity had chosen compassion over caution, hope over fear. The Valari would later say that the day the Deathworlders came was the day light returned to their world. But for humanity, it was more than a rescue. It was a promise. A promise that even in the coldest corners of space, when someone calls for help, there will always be one species brave enough to answer. The human expeditionary fleet, called Iron Mercy, moved silently through the darkness of space. Their engines burned softly, leaving trails of blue light behind them. Every man and woman on board knew they were entering unknown territory, a world no human had ever seen before. The dying planet of the Valari was now only a few hours away. From their windows, the crew could already see a faint red glow spreading across the distance. It was not sunlight, it was fire. The planet was burning. Inside the main ship, UNS Resolute, Captain Mira Solon stood in the control room, her eyes fixed on the holographic screen. The planet looked like a scar in space. Parts of it glowing, parts of it dark, clouds swirling like smoke. The scientists were giving reports in nervous voices. Surface temperature unstable. Radiation levels critical. Multiple power surges detected near the equator. Mira listened quietly, her heart heavy. She had seen many battlefields, but this was different. This was not war. It was death in slow motion. When the fleet finally entered orbit, everyone went silent. Below them lay the remains of what was once a living world. Huge cracks spread across continents. Cities had fallen into the oceans, and the oceans themselves were boiling. Lightning flashed through black clouds, and sometimes, through the smoke, you could see the faint blue shimmer of something. Energy shields trying to hold back destruction. The Valari were still alive somewhere down there, fighting to survive. The fleet sent out small drones to scan the planet. Hours passed as data came in. Finally, the computers found signs of life deep underground. Energy signals, oxygen levels, and faint movement. They had found the Valari shelters. But there was one problem. The atmosphere above the shelters was filled with toxic gas and heavy radiation. Landing there could kill humans within minutes. Captain Mira looked at the report and then turned to her officers. "We're going down anyway," she said. "If they can breathe it, we'll find a way to survive it too." The ships began their descent. The landing was rough. Storms raged across the skies, winds stronger than anything on Earth. Fire and ash surrounded them, shaking the ships like toys. The pilots fought to keep control while alarms screamed. Through the chaos, Mira's calm voice echoed through the radio. "Hold steady. Remember why we're here." After several terrifying minutes, the Resolute landed near a mountain range where one of the shelters was buried. When the landing doors opened, a blast of hot wind hit the team. The ground was cracked and glowing as if the planet itself was bleeding light. The air smelled of smoke and metal. The soldiers and doctors stepped out, their protective suits shining silver under the strange red sky. Around them, everything was silent. No birds, no wind, only the sound of falling dust. Then they saw it. An entrance carved into the ground, half covered in debris. Mira led the team forward. They cleared the entrance and used translation devices to call out. At first, there was no reply. Then from the shadows, something moved. A small, thin figure stepped out, holding a piece of metal like a weapon. Its skin was pale and glowing faintly blue. It looked fragile, almost transparent. When the light from Mira's suit touched its face, she could see fear in its large eyes. The creature spoke in a trembling voice that the translator struggled to catch. "Who are you?" it asked. Mira took off her helmet slowly, letting the creature see her face. She smiled gently. "We came because you called," she said. The creature stared for a moment, then dropped the metal piece and fell to its knees, shaking. From behind it, more Volari began to appear, hundreds of them weak and scared. Some were carrying children. Others looked like they hadn't eaten in days. They had been waiting for rescue for years, never believing it would come. When they saw the humans, tall, armored, and scarred, they whispered to each other in disbelief. To them, the Deathworlders were legends, creatures of strength and danger. But here they were, kneeling down, offering food and water. The Volari elder, his skin almost turning gray from exhaustion, walked slowly toward Captain Mira. He placed his hand on his chest and bowed his head. The translator repeated his words. "You answered. No one ever does." Mira bent down, placing her hand over his. "We heard your voice," she said. "And no voice should die unheard." The rescue teams began to work quickly. Medical drones were set up, shelters were built, and radiation shields activated. The humans shared their oxygen and power with the Volari. Doctors treated burns and sickness while engineers repaired broken machines inside the shelters. The Volari watched in silence, amazed at the human strength. Even when the wind roared and dust storms hit, the Deathworlders never stopped working. But the planet did not rest. Earthquakes shook the ground every few hours and massive firestorms rolled across the horizon. The humans had to move hundreds of survivors to safer zones using heavy transports. Each trip was dangerous. Once a storm hit while a rescue pod was mid-flight. The controls failed and it crashed into the ground. Mira's team rushed to the site, pulling people out of the wreckage one by one. The Volari could not believe how far these strangers would go to save them. In the middle of all this chaos, something beautiful happened. A Volari child, no older than 6, walked up to a human soldier named Arden. She touched the scar on his hand and asked through the translator, "Does it hurt?" Arden smiled and shook his head. "Not anymore," he said. The little girl then placed a glowing flower, the last of her world's plants, into his hand. "Then take this," she said. "It doesn't hurt either." That small moment of kindness spread among the teams, reminding everyone why they were there. Days passed, and more survivors were found. Each rescue felt like a miracle. The Volari began to help the humans in return, guiding them through tunnels, warning them about unstable areas, and sharing what little food they had. Slowly, fear turned into trust. When night came, the Volari elders told stories of their world before it died. Stories of crystal forests, golden seas, and sky bridges. The humans listened quietly, many of them with tears in their eyes. Captain Mira sent a report to Earth Command, describing what they had found. "They are not just survivors," she wrote. "They are dreamers who refuse to give up. They remind us who we were before we became soldiers." The message reached Earth, and millions watched as images of Volari survivors appeared on screens for the first time. Across the human colonies, people felt something change inside them: pride, compassion, and hope. But Mira knew this was only the beginning. The planet was dying faster each day, and time was running out. She looked out at the burning sky and whispered to herself, "We can't save this world, but maybe we can save its people." The next phase of Operation Mercy would begin soon. Evacuation. It would be the most dangerous part yet, but the humans were ready. They had seen the eyes of those who had suffered too long, and they couldn't walk away now. As the sun of the Volari world flickered like a dying flame, the Deathworlders stood their ground. Their armor was covered in ash, their faces tired, but their hearts were strong. They had come to a world at the edge of death, not as conquerors but as saviors. And in the eyes of the Volari, these terrifying beings from the harsh planet called Earth had become something more than warriors. They had become hope. The rescue mission continued day and night without rest. The humans had already saved thousands of Volari, but every hour the planet grew more unstable. The ground shook often, cracks spread across the surface, and firestorms swept through the sky like rivers of lightning. It was a race against time. The Deathworlders worked in silence, their faces tired but their spirits strong. Every breath was heavy with smoke, and every step could be their last. Still, no one stopped. They had made a promise to save every life they could before the world ended. Captain Mira Solon barely slept. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, but she refused to leave her post. She moved from camp to camp, checking the medical tents and evacuation zones. The Volari had started calling her the Ironheart because she never showed fear, not even when death was close. Many Volari followed her now, helping her soldiers carry supplies, guiding them through hidden tunnels and warning them about collapsing areas. The bond between humans and Volari had grown strong. They no longer saw each other as strangers. They were one team, one family, fighting the same battle against time. In the underground shelters, doctors worked in emergency light. The Volari were weak, their bodies unable to handle the radiation. Human doctors used every bit of medicine they had, often giving up their own rations to treat the wounded. One doctor named Lyra stayed awake for 3 days, saving dozens of children. When Mira told her to rest, Lyra only smiled weakly and said, "When they sleep safe, then I'll sleep too." The biggest problem was the main reactor near the capital ruins. It powered most of the surviving shelters, but it had become unstable. If it exploded, half the survivors would die instantly. The engineers tried to fix it, but the heat and radiation made it impossible to stay near for long. They needed someone who could manually stabilize the core, a dangerous job that no one was expected to return from. Lieutenant Auric Vale, a young officer with sharp eyes and calm courage, stepped forward. "I'll do it," he said simply. Mira looked at him for a long moment. "You know what this means," she said quietly. Auric nodded. "I know. But if someone doesn't do it, all of this, everything we've done, will be for nothing." Mira wanted to stop him, but deep down she knew he was right. She clasped his hand tightly. "Then go with strength," she said, "and may your name live forever." Auric took a small team and entered the reactor zone. The tunnels were shaking and the walls glowed red with heat. Every few minutes, explosions rocked the area as the planet's crust broke apart. His suit sensors were screaming warnings: radiation too high, oxygen low, temperature rising. But Auric kept moving. He reached the core chamber where the machinery hummed like a dying heartbeat. Sparks flew from broken cables and molten metal dripped from the ceiling. His team tried to help, but the radiation was too strong. "Go back," he ordered them. "That's an order." They hesitated, but he shouted again, "Go." Reluctantly, they left him behind. Alone, Auric opened the access panel and began working, hands shaking, sweat burning his skin inside the suit. He entered manual override codes, rerouted power, and sealed the leaks one by one. Each minute felt like an hour. His body grew weak, his breathing shallow, but he didn't stop. Outside, Mira waited anxiously. She could hear his voice through the comms, weaker with every word. "Almost done," he said. Just a few more seconds, then there was silence. "Auric?" Mira called. No answer. Suddenly, the monitors showed the reactor stabilizing. The energy levels dropped back to normal. The explosion had been stopped. Everyone in the control room cheered and cried at the same time. But Mira didn't smile. She knew what it had cost. A few moments later, Auric's final message came through, his voice faint but steady. "Tell them, we did what we came to do." Then the signal ended. A blinding light filled the sky as part of the reactor collapsed in on itself. From the surface, it looked like a new star rising in the night. The Volari later named it Vale's Light, a symbol of sacrifice that would never fade. The rescue continued, but the loss of Auric was heavy on everyone's heart. The soldiers didn't speak much after that. They just worked harder, faster, as if trying to honor his memory through action. Even the Volari mourned him. In their culture, they sang for the dead, soft, glowing songs that filled the air with shimmering light. When they sang for Auric, their voices reached even the humans who didn't understand the words. It was a song of gratitude. Days passed, and the evacuation reached its final stage. Massive transport ships were landing and taking off constantly, carrying groups of Volari to orbiting stations. Many of the survivors wept as they left their world behind. From above, their planet looked beautiful but broken, like a jewel cracked in two. The humans knew it would not last much longer. Mira stood on the ridge watching the final ships depart. The wind blew hot across the scorched ground, carrying ashes like snow. She closed her eyes, remembering all the faces, her team, the Volari children, Auric Vale. When the last ship rose into the sky, she whispered, "We came as warriors, but we leave as witnesses." As the fleet prepared to leave orbit, the planet below began to collapse. Massive fire waves spread across the surface and the core exploded in a flash of white light. Everyone on the ships watched in silence. No one spoke. Some wept quietly. The Valari who survived pressed their hands against the windows, saying goodbye to their home. Captain Mira gave one final order. Set course for the colony world. Bring them home. The journey back was quiet. Many of the survivors slept for days, their bodies weak but safe. The humans tended to them, checking their health and giving them food. When one child woke up and asked, "Are we safe now?" a soldier replied softly, "Yes, little one. You're safe. You're with the Deathworlders now." Back on Earth, when news of the mission reached the people, the world stopped for a moment. The story of the Valari rescue spread everywhere. People watched recordings of the burning planet, of humans risking their lives for strangers. The name Deathworlders changed meaning that day. It no longer meant destroyers or warriors. It meant protectors. The galaxy had seen the true heart of humanity. In the days that followed, memorials were built. One of them stood in the central plaza of New Geneva. A tall statue of Auric Vale, holding a glowing crystal like a small sun, looked toward the stars. On its base were engraved the words, "He heard the call and he answered." Every year, people came there to lay flowers and remember the day humanity proved its soul was stronger than any weapon. Captain Mira visited that memorial often. She never forgot his last words or the light that had filled the sky. To her, Auric was not just a hero. He was the proof that even in the darkest times, courage could still burn bright. Whenever she closed her eyes, she could still hear his calm voice saying, "We did what we came to do." And deep inside, she knew that was true. They had done more than save a race. They had saved their own humanity. From that day on, whenever another distress call echoed across the stars, the Deathworlders were always the first to answer. Because they had learned that the greatest strength was not in destroying enemies, but in saving lives, even when it cost everything. And somewhere in the endless night of space, the light of Auric Vale still burned, a reminder that sometimes one man's sacrifice can change the fate of worlds. The surviving Valari people were few in number, but their hearts still carried the memories of their lost world. When the Deathworlders found them, broken and afraid, they did not see them as weak. They saw them as survivors. A new home was built for them, not on another planet, but on a beautiful moon that humans had transformed with their advanced terraforming technology. This moon, once barren and lifeless, was slowly turned into a living paradise. Blue oceans shimmered under a soft sky. Green forests began to grow and warm winds carried the scent of new beginnings. For the first time after centuries of fear and suffering, the Valari could breathe freely again. Human engineers worked side by side with Valari builders, designing homes that mixed both cultures, human strength and Valari beauty. The buildings glowed softly at night, made of crystal-like material that caught the moonlight. Children from both races played together in the open fields, laughing in a way that made the elders smile. It was strange for many to see, the feared Deathworlders, the ones known across galaxies as warriors and destroyers, now helping others heal. But this was a new time, a new chapter. The Terran-Valari alliance became a symbol of hope. For the first time, two completely different worlds, one that had learned to fight to survive and one that had always believed in peace, stood together. The Deathworlders shared everything they had: medicine that could heal wounds in seconds, machines that could clean polluted air, and ideas that made life easier and longer. They even taught the Valari how to defend themselves so that they would never again be helpless in front of cruelty. In return, the Valari gave humanity something they had never truly understood: calmness. They taught the humans the value of silence, of art, of taking a breath before reacting. They showed them that strength was not only in muscles or weapons, but also in the ability to forgive and stay gentle in a harsh world. The Valari artists painted stories of rebirth, while human scientists designed new technologies inspired by Valari harmony. Together, they created schools where children learned both science and compassion. At night, under the twin moons, the leaders of both species would meet and talk. The Deathworlder generals, who once gave orders to destroy fleets, now listened to Valari philosophers who spoke of balance and patience. Sometimes they would sit in silence, just looking at the stars, the same stars that once separated them, now lighting their shared future. But peace is never easy. Beyond their moon, the galaxy watched closely. The other alien empires, powerful and proud, were afraid. They had seen what the humans were capable of during the wars. Entire planets turned into ashes when they fought. And now they saw these same humans using that same power to rebuild, to protect, to create. They have grown too strong, some whispered. They save worlds now. What if they decide to rule them next? Fear spread like poison in the dark halls of distant empires. Secret meetings were held in cold chambers, where alien rulers spoke in nervous tones. They feared the Terran-Valari alliance might change the balance of power in the galaxy. The Deathworlders were dangerous when they were alone, one alien leader said. Now, with allies who believe in peace, they are unstoppable. Many didn't understand that the humans were not seeking control. They were seeking redemption. But fear has a way of twisting truth. On the moon, however, life continued to blossom. Every sunrise brought more color to the sky. The Valari planted trees from their homeworld, and humans protected them as sacred symbols. Together they celebrated a new festival called the Day of Two Dawns, marking the day when both species had chosen hope over hate. The first dawn represented destruction, the past they had both suffered. The second dawn represented life, the light they now shared. Children from both races would release glowing lanterns into the air. The sky would shine with thousands of tiny lights floating upward like souls finding peace. The Deathworlders, once known for their iron hearts, found themselves crying silently as they watched. It was not weakness, and it was healing. Still, deep inside many humans there was guilt. Guilt for the lives they had taken in past wars. Guilt for the power they held. The Valari helped them face that pain. They did not judge them. They would say, "Even the brightest star is born from the darkness." Those words stayed with the Deathworlders. Slowly, they began to believe that perhaps they were not monsters after all. The moon became known as Haven's Light, a place where broken things became whole again. People from other parts of the galaxy came to see it, to understand how enemies could become family. Some came with curiosity, others with envy, but those who stayed left with something they couldn't explain, a strange, quiet hope that maybe, someday, the whole galaxy could change too. The Valari and humans also began to explore the stars together. Joint ships were built carrying both flags. These ships were not made for war, but for discovery. When they entered new systems, they didn't bring fear. They brought help. They repaired satellites, cured alien diseases, and protected small colonies from pirates. Slowly, the name Deathworlders started to change its meaning. It no longer meant destroyers. It meant saviors from the world of death. But among the stars, rumors still spread. Some alien species prepared for war in secret, afraid that humanity's kindness was only a mask. They did not understand that mercy was now humanity's greatest weapon. And on Haven's Light, the humans and Valari continued to live, not caring about the whispers. They had found something worth protecting: trust. One evening, a human commander named Aiden and a Valari elder named Saren stood at the edge of a cliff, watching the horizon. "Do you think they will ever stop fearing us?" Aiden asked quietly. Saren smiled, her eyes reflecting the twin moons. "Fear takes time to fade," she said. "But love is patient. Keep building, keep protecting, and one day the stars will stop whispering." Those words became the Alliance's oath. They were written in both human and Valari languages on the central monument of Haven's Light. "From pain we rise. From mercy we build. Together we endure." Every visitor read those words, and many left in silence, touched by something deeper than words, the truth that even the fiercest beings could learn grace. So, the fragile alliance stood strong. The Deathworlders, once feared across the galaxy, had become the guardians of peace. The Valari, once victims of cruelty, had become the teachers of compassion. And though danger still waited beyond the stars, the fire of hope burned brighter than ever. Proof that even monsters can learn to heal, and even broken hearts can build new worlds. Years passed, and the alliance between the Deathworlders and the Valari became stronger than anyone had imagined. The moon they shared, once just a refuge, had turned into a living world full of color, laughter, and life. Forests grew thicker, oceans sparkled brighter, and cities stretched across the land like veins of light. Humans and Valari no longer lived as two races. They were one people, bound by the same dream, to build a galaxy where no one would have to beg for help the way the Valari once did. But with time, peace began to test their unity. The outside galaxy had not forgotten the Deathworlders. Many alien empires still feared them. They saw the new alliance as a threat to their power, a light too bright for those who had ruled through darkness. Whisper networks began to spread again, and soon old fears gave birth to new enemies. A secret coalition of alien empires called the Sovereign Pact was formed. They met in shadowed chambers far away from Haven's light. The leaders of these empires were cold, calculating, and proud. They had seen how the Deathworlders rebuilt the Valari, and how quickly their technology and influence were growing. They said, "If the humans continue like this, they will not stop until they save the entire galaxy. And when they do, they will control it." So, they made a decision. They would strike first. Back on the moon, no one expected war again. The Deathworlders had put down their weapons, focusing on exploration, medicine, and building new worlds. The Valari had just started to feel safe, and children born after the war knew nothing about fear. Then one silent night, the stars above Haven's light shimmered strangely. It was not beauty this time, it was danger. The sensors picked up hundreds of ships approaching from deep space. The Deathworlder commanders were shocked. "Who dares attack a peaceful world?" one officer shouted. But the answer came quickly. Energy blasts rained down on the atmosphere. Shields rose just in time to protect the moon, but cities trembled and the sky burned with the reflection of explosions. The Sovereign Pact had declared war on the Alliance. The humans could have destroyed the attackers easily. Their technology was far more advanced. But this time they hesitated. The Valari reminded them, "We built this world for peace, not for blood." The Deathworlders agreed, but they also knew they could not let their people die. So they made a vow: they would defend, not destroy. The battle that followed became one of the most famous in galactic history. Human ships, sleek and silver, formed defensive rings around Haven's light, protecting the moon like a parent shields its child. The Valari used their energy fields to heal damaged ships and guide human pilots with telepathic precision. The sky was filled with streaks of light, not just from weapons, but from the glowing wings of Valari rescue crafts flying through chaos to save the wounded. For every ship the Pact sent, the Alliance sent mercy in return. They disabled enemy ships instead of annihilating them. They rescued injured pilots, even those who came to kill them, and treated them with care. It was something the galaxy had never seen before. Mercy in the middle of war, strength without cruelty. When the battle ended after 3 long days, the stars were quiet again. The Pact's forces had retreated, broken and humiliated. Their soldiers had expected monsters, and instead they met protectors. Many of them surrendered, ashamed of what they had been told. Word spread quickly across the galaxy. The Deathworlders did not just win the war. They changed it. On Haven's light there were tears of both grief and pride. Some cities were damaged, lives were lost, but hope remained stronger than ever. The humans and Valari stood together among the ruins, holding hands. Commander Aiden, now older and wiser, stood before the people and said, "We fought without hatred. We defended without vengeance. That is what makes us truly powerful." Those words were broadcast across galaxies. Even those who once feared humanity began to see them differently. The title Deathworlders no longer sounded like a curse. It became a legend, a name whispered with respect. The ones who came from the most dangerous world in the galaxy had turned their pain into purpose. Months after the war, the survivors from the defeated empires were invited to Haven's light. It was a bold decision. Many protested, saying it was too dangerous to bring enemies so close. But the Valari insisted, only understanding can end fear. So the leaders of the Alliance welcomed them not with weapons, but with open hands. They showed them the cities rebuilt by both human and Valari hands, the schools where children of both races studied side by side, and the gardens where once broken people had found peace. One alien leader from the Pact, an elder with silver skin and sad eyes, finally spoke. "We were told you humans destroy everything you touch," he said quietly. "But you have built something we could never create. Forgiveness." Aiden smiled gently. "Forgiveness is harder than war," he replied. "But it lasts longer." That moment changed everything. The galaxy began to shift. The old empires, tired of endless fear and control, started sending diplomats to Haven's light. Soon, what began as a small alliance between 2 races grew into something far greater: the Galactic Concord. A council made of different species united by one belief: Survival means nothing without compassion. Under this new Concord, humans and Valari led efforts to rebuild destroyed worlds, rescue orphaned colonies, and protect weaker civilizations from pirates and tyranny. For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy began to heal. Still, life was not perfect. There were always those who didn't believe in peace, smugglers, warlords, and rebels who thrived in chaos. But whenever danger rose, the Concord sent out ships bearing a single emblem. Two hands, one human and one Valari, joined together in light. Those who saw it knew help was coming. Generations later, stories of the old war became bedtime tales. Children on distant worlds grew up hearing about the Deathworlders who turned away from destruction and became saviors. They built statues of both humans and Valari standing side by side, holding the torch of unity. And yet on quiet nights, some of the older Deathworlders would still sit beneath the stars, remembering the price of peace. They remembered the cries, the pain, the endless darkness they had to walk through before finding light. But they also knew that pain had shaped them. It had made them capable of the greatest strength of all, kindness. One evening as the sun set on Haven's light, a group of children ran across the fields, human and Valari, laughing and chasing each other. A grandmother watching them from a distance whispered, "This is what they fought for." Indeed, that was the legacy of the Deathworlders. They had once been the galaxy's nightmare, the creatures who survived death itself. But now they were its guardians, the proof that no matter how dark the past, hearts can change. And in the silence between stars, where once there had been war, there was now peace. A fragile, precious peace, born not from power but from the courage to forgive. The Deathworlders had shown the universe that true strength was not about how much you could destroy, but how much you could heal. The galaxy had entered a new era, one not ruled by fear, but by unity. And whenever an SOS echoed across the void, no one feared who would answer, because now everyone knew the truth. If the Deathworlders came, they would not bring destruction, they would bring hope.